ونصلي ونسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. It's all fine, yeah? It's all fine. Oh, yeah, sure. طيب, unless you have to lean, please don't lean. But I guess we're all comfortable late in the day, alhamdulillah. This time, a bit different from previous lessons, we will get right into the hadith, inshallah ta'ala. Because our essentials of character, completing the character of a Muslim, very deep, concise points mentioned by our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these essentials that we have to cover. This 20 minutes, half an hour even, will not give you justice. But we try our best to point out, highlight important bits that we learn from this hadith. So we reach hadith number 15, وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدُ شُكْرًا. الحديث الخامس عشر عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. رواه البخاري ومسلم. And the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment, then let him say that which is good or remain quiet. Whoever believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment, let him honor his neighbor. Whoever believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment, let him honor his guest. Reported by Imam Bukhari and Muslim. Extremely important emphasized points in this hadith by our Messenger ﷺ, tying these essentials of one's character to the direct belief in Allah Azza wa Jal and the Day of Judgment. First of all, here, like before, where we mentioned loving for your brother, we are referring to the completion of faith. It's not that a person don't have faith or is a deficiency of faith, a full deficiency, but rather is part of completion of faith when it's either mentioned you don't believe unless so and so, or the one who believes in Allah, then let him do so and so, or let him say so and so. In any hadith that you may read or come across, when this terminology is mentioned by our Messenger ﷺ, that it refers to the completion of one's faith. And it is to greatly emphasize the points. So that as soon as you hear, مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ لَا يُؤْمِنُ أَحَدُكُمْ. As soon as it's mentioned, the ears, they open up. Or ought to open up. And we pay close attention to the words coming after this condition of faith by our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here we notice that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the pillars of faith, and there were how many pillars of faith?
14. Pillar of what? Faith.
Faith. I think I've said salah too much, so 14 is stuck in here. لا لا أخي, no أركان الصلاة, أركان الإيمان. أركان الإيمان is
Five.
Six arkan al-iman, not Islam. As we said before in the Hadith Jibreel, we covered in great detail the arkan of Islam and iman. Islam, the outward actions, and then afterwards, the next level, the six pillars of faith that's got to do with the inwardly actions, the actions of the heart, outwardly actions, allowing faith to take root in the heart, So here, from the pillars of faith, Rasulullah ﷺ has pointed out, singled out the two greatest ones. Man kana yu'minu billah, whoever believes in Allah Azza wa Jal, no doubt the greatest of all arkan, pillars, condition of faith. Whoever believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment. Remember we said that there are 5 keys to the unseen that only Allah Azza wa Jal knows. The greatest of which is the Day of Judgment. One of the reasons why the ultimate knowledge regarding the hour belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal alone. So here you see these two major pillars of faith being mentioned as conditions. And we know the ultra emphasis on the following points, the 3 points that's mentioned in this hadith, right? The first one, whoever believes in Allah Day of Judgment, then let him speak good or remain quiet. Ya Allah, how many problems it will solve if you were to just follow this one single hadith. Speaking good or remaining quiet. Allah Azza wa Jal is so important, saying that which is good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says in Surah Al-Isra, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and tell my servants to say that which is good. Why? You think before you speak to others. You know the famous saying that words can be a lot sharper than the sword. When you physically attack someone, a lot of the time it's physical pain that will heal bi'idhnillah. But sometimes there are words that can come out that can literally break a person. Make or break a person. There are times where you feel down, you go through distress, low points of life, and one brother just coming and asking genuinely how you are, speaking good, just makes your day. At the same time, you might having high note in life, and then someone says something that is so hurtful, that it never leaves you. Whenever you see that person, you remember that that person said such and such a thing. Never leaves. This is why the Messenger ﷺ has said in a number of ahadith, numerous ahadith, emphasizing speaking good, emphasizing thinking before you speak. إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ ما يتبين ما فيها يهوي بها في النار أبعد ما بين المشرق والمغرب. The slave, the believing slave, will utter a statement, will say a word, not recognizing the severity of what he said. Due to that word, he will be thrown in the pits of the fire, the width of which is equal to the east and the west. Because of one word. I once spoke to my uncle. On my dad's side, he was born deaf. He can't speak, he can't hear. So he said to me one day, we were sitting in the car. He speaks with sign language and noise, the ones that got relatives and how they communicate in their own way. So he's communicating and telling me that there's so much in me I want to say, but there's a barrier and it doesn't want to come out. I said to him, Uncle, you're very fortunate. He's my dad's brother. You're very fortunate. You don't realize the ni'mah when you give it. He looks at me and goes, what do you mean ni'mah? I said to him, you have no idea how many people will end up being punished, being thrown into the fire because of the tongue. Well, you are safe from that, from the day you're born until the day you depart this dunya. You don't have to worry about the responsibility of what comes out of your mouth. As in the other hadith, people will be thrown face first into the fire because of what they've said. Yeah? So it's extremely important that we emulate, we practice as much as we can this first initial part of the hadith. We remember that every single thing that you say, every single utterance, every word being written down. Every single thing you say is written down. And one of the most important things that we need to stay away from, especially the youngsters, is using filth in language when they're speaking, when generally communicating. Using swear words, filthy words, childish words. That's nothing to do with what they're talking about. We're using it as part of language as if it's a normal thing. Filth. This is, wallahi, this is not how a Muslim speaks. We need to control our tongues and not just leave it to say whatever. Leave anything to just come out. Just say it without thinking first. And one beneficial way of changing that is getting used to doing extra dhikr, even when you're angry. A lot of the times you get angry, you get frustrated, you're stressed, you're emotional, and you sometimes can't control what comes out of your mouth. Because you're used to filth, you're used to swearing. When you don't have control over your mouth, it's even easier for that to come out. So it's essential, no matter how difficult it is, to get in the habit of doing the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal. Yeah? Doing the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal, even if you're angry. Subhanallah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Ya Rabbi. La ilaha illallah. You know, you're angry, but you're still using dhikr. Yeah? There's a guy, he said, he almost got hit by a car. And the car just about missed him. But in that moment, he froze when the car was coming and it was getting close. He said the S word. He said the S word. That car, alhamdulillah, just about missed. But then afterwards, when he pondered over what happened, he goes, subhanAllah, imagine I actually was hit by the car. The last word out of my mouth, leaving this dunya, would have been S-H-I-T. You know? We need to think about controlling our mouths, controlling our tongues. It doesn't matter if you're older or in a higher position than others. If you've been given a position by Allah Azza wa Jal, it doesn't mean that you abuse it by using your tongue negatively. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the highest of positions. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu says, he was his servant, he served him as a kid for 10 years. He said, not once did he raise his voice at me. Servant, not his child. Let's put the child away, his own offspring. This is a servant boy from Medina. It's not even from his own people, from Quraysh. It's from Ahlul Medina. Not once did he raise his voice at him. Yeah? Let alone our children, our families, and the ones that are dependent on you. You don't just misuse your position Allah Azza wa Jalla has given you by using your tongue in a negative way. No matter what language. It doesn't matter the language. The swearing, and sometimes you hear it's like a common thing, yeah, where people swear by other than Allah. Just like, as if it's nothing, you know? Yeah, mom's life, I did this and that. Akhi, what are you saying? You don't realize you think it's such an innocent thing that took 2 seconds, but that is shirk. You know, you don't realize the gravity of some of these statements that have become so normal in society. Yeah? So there are a lot of things that we need to stay away from. Stay away from vain speech. كلام لا ينفع. You know that just nonsense. You know, when people sit and they're talking nonsense, it's full waste of your time. Most of the time, you find that when people just keep on talking nonsense, it always lead to one sin or another. It will either be backbiting, or either be slandering, or either be making fun of someone, or either be spreading rumors, or is either talking or spreading gossip. Yeah? And by the way, backbiting, we all know the severity of backbiting from the kaba'ir, the major sins. A common misconception is when you point out someone backbiting or talking about someone else, they say, "Akhi, yeah, but it's the truth though." But that is the very definition of backbiting. It needs to be the truth. ذِكْرُ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ. Definition of ghiba, definition of backbiting is you mentioning about someone in their absence that which they don't like. That is the truth. Yeah, emphasis on this part. It has to be the truth for it to be backbiting. If it's a lie, it's not ghiba, it's not backbiting. It's slandering, a tuhma, which is far worse. Not only are you talking about him, but you're also lying on top of that, making it worse. Yeah? So we need to keep in mind these things, staying away from using our tongue in a negative way, using it in ma'siyah. We shouldn't be using it in vain, nonsense speech, let alone disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Yeah, so some of these things I'm mentioning again, rumors, just spreading rumors. Oh, you heard about this one said this one that did that. And why? This is what we talked about another time, right? Emphasizing the severity of wasting time on just trying to find out everything about anyone and everyone and what everyone is saying or what everyone is doing in their lives. These are hadith, they back each other up. That one also says, don't get into that which doesn't concern you. And don't speak, in vain or talk nonsense. Speak good or remain quiet. Just like the scholar says, no one ever regretted silence. No one regrets silence. So if you're doubtful of something, remain quiet. And you will not be in doubt in anything. Another point that's important is speaking about the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal without knowledge. My brother, you are not going to be asked on Yawm al-Qiyamah why you didn't give fatwas and you didn't start acting like a scholar in front of everyone. You are not going to be asked. You're a nobody, you're a layman, with all due respect. That's the truth. So as far as you're a layman, as long as you're a layman, you're not going to be asked. The minute you open your mouth, that's when you'll be asked. You're not going to be asked, why didn't you say? You'll be asked, you said such and such a thing, why did you say it? Even if you get the point right just because you speak without knowledge. You need to be careful speaking about the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. Wallahi, there's some people giving fatwas to questions. The companions themselves would shake when hearing these questions. And then now you find every Ahmad Mahmoud, yeah, I think is like this and that. I think it's halal, maybe it's haram. I don't know, I heard it's haram. You need to be very, very careful when talking about halal, haram, and the religion without ilm. There is no need. If someone asks you, then why are you shying away from saying, I don't know? Even if it's a scholar, if he doesn't know, he should have that taqwa and God consciousness to say, La adri. Like Imam Malik rahimahullah famously said in the story. The man came with 40 questions, most of them he couldn't answer. He goes, what am I going to tell my people? They sent me from the other side of the world, Morocco, Maghrib. He said, go to them and say, Imam Malik says, La adri. Imam Malik says, I don't know. You know? So, using your tongue in a negative way should be avoided at all costs. Now, it is understandable, sometimes we make mistakes. You know, we fall short, we sometimes say something, we didn't mean it, we weren't understood maybe out of context, or we outright made a mistake. We said something in a way we shouldn't have said it. Now that you've used your tongue accidentally, use your tongue again to rectify it. Quickly, you shouldn't leave it for that wound to take place, for shaitan to play his tricks, to play his games, and cause division. Don't say, you know what, I shouldn't have said it. I shouldn't have said it, I'm sorry. I know it's very, very difficult to say I'm sorry, but if you can't, then at least say, if you don't have the strength to say to that person, I'm sorry, then at least you can say, may Allah forgive any one of us if he thinks we have crossed the boundary. You're still asking for forgiveness. And you need to ask forgiveness if you wrong someone, even using your tongue, and if that person decides to hold it against you, they have the utmost right to do so. You will be held accountable in front of that person on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So you need to be careful. Anyone you're wrong, you think you're spoken about, you think something's mentioned, quickly, don't delay. Quickly go and ask for forgiveness. Because death can come at any time. And while you're alive, you have the opportunity to ask for forgiveness. Allah Azza wa Jal forgives all sins. Alhamdulillah, we have good thoughts about Allah Azza wa Jal. That He is all merciful, all forgiving. But we also know He is truthful when He says He will not interfere when it comes to dealings between two slaves. He will not interfere. So now it's not about just asking Allah for forgiveness. You need to ask that person for forgiveness. Anything, any way you wronged anyone, use that tongue of yours for good. Use that tongue for qira'ah al-Quran, for dhikr, for speaking good. Say something good. Do something good. Spread the salam. And you, if you're a person that's constantly engaged in vain speech, you'll see the difference. You will see the difference. And you automatically start moving away from nonsense and gatherings of nonsense. Okay? So that's with regards to the first point that Rasulullah ﷺ has mentioned. Number 2 is the condition of faith in Allah and the Day of Judgment. He says, the one who believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment, let him honor his neighbor. And we all know the importance, the emphasis that Islam puts on the rights of the neighbor. In countless ahadith, we've even seen where Rasulullah ﷺ has explicitly said, if you are not good to your neighbor, you are not going to Jannah. If your neighbor, as in the hadith in Muslim, if your neighbor is not safe from your evil conduct, you will not enter paradise. You are not going to Jannah. Rasulullah ﷺ was informed of the woman Abida, worshipper of Allah Azza wa Jal, day and night, fasting the day, praying at night, but she's not good to her neighbor. He said she's in the fire. The rights of the neighbor. Rasulullah ﷺ says in the famous hadith, ما زال جبريل يوصيني بالجار حتى ظننت أنه سيورثه. Jibreel kept coming, kept emphasizing the rights of the neighbor to the point that I thought that they're gonna inherit from me. You know, like the children, they inherit from the deceased. He thought that the rights get to that level where they're gonna even be included in the inheritance, subhanAllah. That's how much rights a neighbor have. Now you got two parts to this, yeah? Number one is when the neighbor is a Muslim. Now they've got double rights. They got the right of being your neighbor, and they got the right of Islam, brotherhood in faith. And we all know the sanctity of a Muslim when it comes to the religion. And upholding the salam, emphasis on being good, greeting, sharing in times of joy, times of pain, respecting their dignity and their awrah, lowering your gaze when their family are there, you know, and when the doors are open, for example, that you don't look into the house, that you keep away out of respect. You go and ask. You go and ask about them. You invite them to your house. You maybe cook for them. You know, this society, you see, generally how it works is like a me, myself, and I. Like I'm to myself, and that's my neighbor, and then we keep separate. And you find sometimes years and years pass, and they barely know each other. That is not the way a Muslim deals with the neighbor, especially if it's a Muslim. When it's a non-Muslim, yes, it is true that the one part is now missing, and it's only the right of the neighbor. But now another thing is important. You representing Islam. Now that part is also crucial. That you're ambassador of this religion. They're not going to come and read through the text. They're going to interpret Islam through you. Through the way you are. I know of a brother, Allahumma barik, the way he was towards his neighbors. His neighbors were all white people, yeah, English people. Always asking about them, always giving them gifts, or when they cook something, they always share with them. Ask how they are, ask the names, you know, greeting them, smiling towards them, saying hi. And then they stayed there for a couple of years. When they were moving, English people, they start weeping. They start crying. They were like, how are we going to cope without you? You know, we've never seen people like this. This is the way of showcasing Islam to non-believers, especially neighbors, that we make them aware you have a responsibility to give formal da'wah as well, because you'll be asked about this. You had the opportunity to call them to the religion, and you stay to you and your family and your children, and you didn't even tell them. It's a major thing. You didn't formally tell them about Islam. There can be witnesses against you. More so if you haven't even represented Islam in yourself in front of them. You know, if you're a person of evil character, evil conduct, but who's gonna see Islam in a positive way when they look at you, if you're like that, if you're that kind of an evil person, you know? So we need to remember, when it comes to the neighbor generally, whether it's Muslim, non-Muslim, Muslim for being a Muslim, non-Muslim for representing Islam, that you don't cause them harm, you don't make noise, you're not loud and disrespectful towards them. Even if they are non-Muslims, if they're older than you, we respect elders. It doesn't matter if they're Muslim or non-Muslim. You know, some elderly people, they find astonishing that we have this respect. You know, like when you respect them, when you're so used to respecting someone older than you, and they see the respect there. So you did that for me? You know? Like, there are ways of representing Islam, showing Islam to other people. Even the ones that are Muslim that may have fallen short, for them to come back to the track and become the track and become practicing. being good, asking about them, sharing in their joy and pain, greeting them, smiling when seeing them, being genuine towards them, lowering your gaze, respecting their dignity, respecting their sanctity, respecting their house. When you knock, if you need to go, you step back. You don't stand right at the door. You step back, you stand on the side, especially if it's a Muslim. You stand on the side, because that's their awrah. You're not allowed to peek through in the house. Yeah? These are some of the things we keep in mind, and if they make mistakes, everyone makes mistakes. You'll make mistakes, they'll make mistakes. Forgive, pardon, and move on, rather than holding petty grudges and then letting that affect your relationship with your neighbors. Yeah, so always be good to neighbors. And by the way, neighbors does not mean that it has to be the one directly next to you only, and the one after is not neighbor. No, everyone in that vicinity, around you, around your house, they are all neighbors. Not just the one that's right next to you. Yes, emphasis because it's right next to you, so there are certain things that you need to keep in mind, more so than if they're further away, but they're all considered your neighbors. Yeah, so make sure you represent Islam in a positive way, and then you remember, if they are Muslim, that they are your brothers in faith, and their family, their belongings, and the dignity is to be recognized. Okay? So number 3, that Rasulullah ﷺ has mentioned in this hadith, is the one who believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment, let him honor his guest. How do we honor the guest? When they come to the house, when we invite them to the house. First of all, an important thing to mention here. It is important to find balance when it comes to inviting people to your house. There are some people that they oppress and they dhulm on their families because they keep inviting people to the house. Every day, every other day, there's someone in the house. Yes, it's good to take care of guests and honor the guests, like it said in the hadith, but you need to find balance. You need to find balance. Your family also have a right upon you. As Rasulullah mentioned, everything has a right upon you. Your own body has rights upon you. You know? So we need to strike that balance. There's some people, there's guests every single day, there are guests in the house. Yeah, so we need to recognize the rights of everyone, your family, your spouse, your children, and your guests. So having them over means when they come, you smile, you wear nice clothes, perfume, the house is clean, you've prepared, for their arrival in every way, giving them the best of the best, the best treatment. What's astonishing is when it comes to guests, is important enough for details regarding honoring the guest being mentioned in the Quran. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when the angels came, Jibreel, Mikael, and Israfil, they were passing by on their way to deliver the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal to the nation of Lut alayhi salam. On their way, they initially met with Ibrahim alayhi salam, and all 3 of them were in the form of 3 men. So Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't recognize them, but he just saw 3 travelers. He saw 3 random travelers. He quickly invited them in the house, and him honoring the guests as such a level that Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned exactly what He prepared for them. بِعِجْلٍ سَمِينٍ, a fattened calf, meat, lahm. And the other in Surah Hud, بِعِجْلٍ حَنِيذٍ, roasted, fattened calf. Mention this, we start becoming hungry. Laham, meat, the best of the best that he had, he prepared for those guests. Random travelers, these are not like his close friends or that he knows. No, as far as he's concerned, these are just three travelers that are tired, they're on their journey. So let me invite them and then let me give them the best of the best, which is what he did. So you give them the best of what you have prepared in the house. At the same time, it's important to remember the balance between serving good food and the best of what you have and not doing israf. Yeah? Not doing israf. Not doing way too much. It's quality rather than quantity. Like in some houses you go to, there's 7, 8 different dishes and there's like 3, 4 people. Yeah, so israf is very subjective and it really depends on the individual scenarios. But generally speaking, if you know that a certain thing is way too much and it can't be kept and it's going to end up in the bin most likely, keep it, keep it concise. Maybe make a few dishes, but make them very good and invite me. Make sure you invite me as well. People are fully into it, they don't recognize what I'm saying. So if you're making quality food, then I also need to be there. So inshallah. But yeah, so it's important to remember the balance, that you don't make too much so it doesn't become israf. Here, Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he prepared a fattened calf for those people, a roasted calf. Yeah, so when they didn't touch the food, he started eating. He started eating, and when they didn't touch it, malaika, they don't eat. He thought they might have ill intent, ill intention. They're going to rob him or they're going to harm him. So they said, we're angels from Allah Azza wa Jalla, giving you the glad tidings of another son, Ishaq, and a son to him, Yaqub alayhi salam. Right, so the point of that was that you prepare for them the best of the best. And as for the guest himself, if you are a guest, remember to make dua for the host. As per the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أكل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما عند رجل وشرب فلما فرغ قال اللهم بارك لهم فيما رزقتهم واغفر لهم وارحمهم. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate and he drank in a man's house, and when he was finished, he made that dua. So if you don't know the dua, you should learn it, and if you can't learn it, then at least have the phone so you can read from it, or you can say equivalent to it. Obviously, you don't have to. Saying that is better, following the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But if you want to say just general du'as, you can also do that. So it's very good to make dua for the host. Yeah, and the host himself needs to tend to all the needs of the guests, whatever that might be, as long as it's not excessive. And then at the end, that host should walk that person out of the house, escort him out of the house. It sounds like you tell him to leave. No, as in like you walk with them. It's nice going with them to the door. And even better if you can walk with them out as well. It's like a courtesy to the guest that you stay with them until the very end, until they get in the car, and even then until they drive off and you know that they're safe and they're able to leave from your premises, from being your guest. It's good to accompany them throughout all of that, yeah? And you don't exclude anyone. Don't do these exclusion games. When you know that other people are around, you invite them and you know they're going to hear, just invite them as well. If you don't want to invite certain people, make sure they're not going to hear about it. I understand there are times where, for particular reasons, you'd want to invite specific people. Of course, understandable. But don't jump into it and invite them in such a way that everyone is going to hear about it and people that may be like, how come like I wasn't invited? You know, like do it in a smart way. You know, in a way that you know that other people are not going to hear about it, or if they hear about it, they understand that it's like for a specific reason. You know, so we keep those points in mind when it comes to honoring the guest and honoring the host as a guest. When you are the guest, yeah, you need to be respectful. As we said before, stand on the side. When you get to someone's house, you go inside and you follow their lead, so you don't accidentally go somewhere you should. Obviously, we all know about this anyways. So you sit in the proper way, depending on who they are, you sit with etiquette, you speak to them with etiquette, and then you, as we said, you make dua for them, for barakah, and mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal to be bestowed upon them and their wealth and their family and their food. That way, all of these points generally they emphasize al-ukhuwa and unity. Imagine how many problems in society can be solved by just following these simple guidelines of the Messenger ﷺ. And these are all connected to each other. Speaking good, honoring the neighbor, honoring the guest. Because you need to speak good to everyone, especially the neighbor and the guest. Yeah? The neighbor is most likely going to be your guest from time to time. You need to speak good to them, and they are your guests as well from time to time. They come to your house, you go to their house. The guest, as for the guest, it can be your neighbor. And even with the guest, you need to emphasize speaking good to them when they're in your house as your guest, or if you're the guest in the house, to anyone hosting you. So all of these are connected to one another. So it is extremely important that we not just listen, but that we actually apply these teachings of our beloved Messenger ﷺ. And subhanAllah, you honestly realize why Allah Azza wa Jalla said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. In Rasulullah ﷺ, there is for you the perfect example. In every way you can think of, difficulties, times of joy, pain, anger, frustration, in every situation and emotion, you can find ways of following the Messenger ﷺ. Especially when it comes to being upright, which is so important, and it comes, as we said before in the analogy, before the da'wah to Islam. It can't be emphasized enough that he was living with his people for 40 years before being a messenger and a prophet for only 23 years. Almost half of that. Emphasizing good character and being upright. May Allah Azza wa Jalla allow us to follow in the path of our Messenger ﷺ. May Allah Azza wa Jalla reunite us with him, as he said that our promised meeting place that we'll see him inshallah sallallahu will be at the river of Kawthar. May Allah Azza wa Jalla allow us to drink from his blessed hands, and may Allah Azza wa Jalla allow us to enter his eternal bliss with all the prophets and the companions and the martyrs. Any questions before we end? Fadal.
Two questions if I can. We're not being too greedy.
Fadal.
The first one is kind of, so on the basis of someone speaking or during a discussion, I guess the same principle applies to in whatever form it is in. So whether someone's writing or something like a message or doing gestures, or I guess obviously different ways to basically communicate or say something, right? So would it be right to say that that applies to all things, not just what you verbally express?
That's a very good point. I should have mentioned that, because that's very relevant in our times now. It is literally the exact same. Whether you say it or you type it, just typing it without you saying it doesn't save you from the sins of all of those that I mentioned. Rumors, backbiting, in any way, shape or form, those are done they carry equal weight of wickedness. Yeah, if you don't say and type that, I didn't say it, I typed it, doesn't matter. It's the same sin. So that's a very good point. Jazakallah khair for mentioning that.
The other question I was going to ask was, if you're in the presence of someone else who's, for instance, let's say they are doing namima, or maybe they're backbiting about someone else, what's the kind of, what is supposed to be the individual stance that you have as someone who's essentially, you're not actually engaging it, but you know they put it towards you? Would it be kind of like that you, I know I've read somewhere that you can just like leave a place, like you can go away from that scenario, or just kind of ditch them, or is it like kind of that you kind of not scold them, but you know you put them, you tell them, and say no, this is like a line, you know, you don't go beyond. How do you set the tone basically in that scenario?
So generally it depends on, it's also a good question, it depends on what the gathering is and who they are. Generally, if they're just brothers or friends that you're with, it should be mentioned. Okay, let's not talk about other people. Can we talk about something else? We don't need to talk about it. It just depends on who is there. It's difficult to pinpoint specific thing to say depending on like different scenarios. But general thing is to highlight it in any way. And then if it doesn't help and you're able to leave, then it's better to leave, find an excuse to leave. And then just like, if this gathering becomes known as that kind of gathering where there's no, for example, dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jalla, sometimes it happens, you know, in a gathering, someone slips up. They say something and they were not meant to say it, and then it's quickly like, it can be reminded. But other gatherings, the gathering is a gathering of evil in and of itself. So if that is the case, then one should really reconsider the people that they would sit with, especially in those type of gatherings. Now, another point that becomes a bit tricky is when that is family. When that is family, and especially if those are senior people in your family. Yeah, it's not as easy telling your, you know, like aunties, uncles, your parents, your grandparents. You know, you need to be very careful with the wording used when you want to highlight that this is what we're saying is not right. We should stop. There was one of the brothers. He told his auntie, and his auntie like fully starts swearing at him. Like, who the hell are you to tell me? You know, general thing that people say. And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to use different tactic. So then one time she starts speaking about someone, and he's like, this is so bad now. She's like, what happened? He's like, do you like this person? She's like, no. Of course I don't like this person. I hate this person. Then he's like, no, but because of what you said, like, you do like good deeds. Now you've given her the good deeds. And then she went quiet. She said, nah. Why should she have my good deeds? Wallah, we're not speaking about her again. I'm not giving her my good deeds. She doesn't deserve my good deeds. I do all of this, and then out of anyone, she is going to get my good deeds. Nah, we're not talking about her again. Yeah, so this is like one example, but generally depending on the exact scenario, sometimes there are maybe family gatherings where this happens on a regular basis, and no matter how many times or how many ways it's said, it can't be helped. At the same time, there's silat al-rahim, you can't cut them off, you know, that kind of delicate scenario. Wait, as long as you've mentioned it, after that, let's say you're not able to, understandable, if there's like family gathering, you can't just get up and leave. Just like you do with friends, like it's not as easy depending on family members. But as long as you've tried, and if it doesn't work, then Allah Azza wa Jalla, inshallah, won't hold you accountable for that. If you just stay away or try to busy yourself, or try to not focus, or maybe keep yourself busy. Any other questions?
With the neighbors, I mean, are you meant to go out of your way to try and be good to them? Because some people, no matter how much you try, they probably don't want to engage with you, don't want to really, they just want to be left to themselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you then just leave it at that?
Now, as some people, whether they're just those type of people, like introverts, so they just to themselves and they like that privacy, you respect that. Like you don't go, because now that is harming the neighbor, because you keep trying, you keep pushing, after, you know, like after some time you know if that person likes their privacy or not, if you're crossing the boundary by doing this or not. As long as like you do as much as you can, you know, bearing in mind their habits that you know about, that you, for example, don't have to go above and beyond if they don't want that, but as long as maybe like, hi, you're right, and obviously referring to like white people, but generally, if even if it's Muslim, like Salaam alaikum, you okay, yeah, good, alhamdulillah, okay, that's it. If that's what they're comfortable with, then they're comfortable with that. Alhamdulillah. طيب وصلى الله على محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.